Someone once said, "Only men have parents, the rest of us have owners." And I never understood that until my parents sat me down and casually announced they were giving our family house to my golden child brother, the same house I'd been paying rent on for years while he lived there free. They expected me to smile and be grateful, like I always had. What they didn't know was that my name was already on the deed. The look on their faces when the lawyer dropped that bombshell? Pure freedom. If you've ever been the backup child while your sibling got everything handed to them, smash that subscribe button. Hit like if you believe in legal karma, and drop a comment about the most unfair family treatment you've witnessed. This story proves that sometimes the underestimated child holds all the cards. Let's dive in. My name is Lauren. I'm 30 years old and I've spent my entire life being my family's plan B. You know that child in every family? The one who's supposed to be grateful for scraps while the golden child gets the feast? That was me. From the time I could walk, it was crystal clear that my younger brother Tyler was the sun around which our family's universe revolved. Every decision, every dollar, every dream centered on him. When Tyler wanted guitar lessons at age 8, my parents magically found $300 a month. When I asked for art classes that same year, I was told we couldn't afford it, and maybe I could practice drawing with the free pencils from the bank. When Tyler crashed his first car at 16, texting while driving, completely his fault, my parents had a replacement vehicle in the driveway within a week. A nice one, too, not some beat-up starter car. When I turned 16, I was handed a bus pass and told that public transportation builds character. The phrase that defined my childhood was my mother's favorite. Be grateful, Lauren. Tyler just has more potential. You're resilient. You'll figure it out. Be grateful. Those 2 words became the soundtrack to my life, playing on repeat every time I questioned why I was always the afterthought. College was when the pattern really crystallized. Tyler got accepted to State University, and suddenly my parents were taking out loans, setting up payment plans, talking about his bright future. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs, nights at a diner and weekends at a retail store, just to afford my textbooks at community college. When I asked if they could help with even a small loan for my books, Mom sighed and said, "Lauren, honey, we're already stretched thin with Tyler's education. You've always been so independent." Independent. That was their code word for ignored. By the time I finished nursing school, paid for entirely by myself through loans, grants, and those grueling work shifts, Tyler had dropped out of college twice and was back home playing video games. But somehow, I was the one expected to contribute to the household when I moved back in temporarily to save money. That temporary arrangement stretched into 3 years. 3 years of paying $800 a month in rent to live in my childhood bedroom, while Tyler lived there completely free. When I pointed out this obvious unfairness, Dad would chuckle and say, "Well, he's trying to find his path. You've got a steady career now." Let me paint you a picture of what my life looked like during those 3 years. I'd come home from 12-hour shifts at the hospital, dealing with everything from heart attacks to overdoses to families falling apart in waiting rooms, and find Tyler exactly where I'd left him that morning, on the couch, controller in hand, empty energy drink cans scattered around him like confetti. The house I was paying to live in was falling apart around us. The roof leaked in 2 places, the furnace was on its last legs, and the kitchen faucet had been dripping for so long it had stained the sink. Guess who ended up researching contractors, getting quotes, and organizing repairs? Not Tyler. And definitely not my parents, who were somehow always too busy or too stressed to deal with home maintenance issues. I started keeping a detailed record of everything I paid for, not because I planned to use it against them, but because I'm naturally organized and wanted to track my expenses. Rent, utilities when the bills got too high, groceries when the fridge was empty, that emergency plumber when the basement flooded. Over 3 years, I calculated that I'd contributed over $40,000 to keeping that household running. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in October. I'd just finished the most brutal shift of my career. A multi-car accident had brought in 6 patients, including 2 kids. I'd spent 14 hours straight in trauma, watching doctors fight to save lives, while I did everything from starting IVs to holding pressure on wounds to comforting terrified family members in the hallway. I came home emotionally drained, physically exhausted, my scrubs stained with things I try not to think about. All I wanted was a hot shower and 8 hours of unconsciousness. Instead, I walked into a family meeting that was already in progress. Mom, Dad, and Tyler were sitting around the dining room table, the same table where I'd done homework while Tyler played outside, where I'd eaten countless dinners in silence while they discussed Tyler's latest interests and achievements. They all looked up when I entered, and something in their expressions made my stomach drop. "Lauren, perfect timing," Dad said, gesturing to the empty chair across from Tyler. "We need to talk to you about something important." I sat down slowly, still in my scrubs, still smelling like hospital antiseptic. Tyler was leaning back in his chair with this smug expression I'd seen 1,000 times before, the look he got when he knew he was about to get something good. "We've been thinking about the future," Mom began, her voice taking on that careful tone she used when she was about to deliver news she knew I wouldn't like. "Tyler's 25 now, and he needs stability to really launch his career. Tyler hadn't held a job for longer than 6 months in his entire adult life." Dad cleared his throat. "We've decided that when we retire in a few years, this house is going to go to Tyler. He'll need the equity and the stability, and honestly, Lauren, you've always been so capable and independent. You'll land on your feet no matter what." The words hit me like a physical blow. This house, the house I'd been paying to live in, the house I'd been maintaining and repairing, the house where I'd invested 3 years of rent money, was being given to Tyler. Just like that. "Tyler's going to inherit the house," Mom continued, "and we know you'll understand. You've got your nursing career, you're financially stable, but Tyler needs this head start." I looked around the table at my family, my parents, who'd spent 30 years making excuses for why Tyler deserved more. Tyler, who was now grinning like he'd just won the lottery without buying a ticket. The rational part of my brain knew I should argue, should point out the thousands I'd contributed, should remind them that Tyler had never paid a dime toward this house while I'd essentially been covering part of their mortgage. Instead, I nodded. "I understand," I said quietly. But here's what they didn't understand. I'd learned something important during those 3 years of watching Tyler coast through life while I worked my ass off. I'd learned to protect myself, to document everything, to never again assume that fairness would happen naturally. 2 years earlier, when my parents were struggling with some financial difficulties, they'd needed to refinance the house, to consolidate debt. The bank, looking at their income and credit situation, had required additional security for the loan. Specifically, they'd required that I co-sign and be added to the deed as a co-owner. At the time, my parents had presented it as a temporary necessity. "Just until we get back on our feet, honey. You know we'd never put you at risk." I'd signed the papers because I trusted them, because I wanted to help, and because I honestly hadn't thought much about the implications. What it meant, legally, was that I wasn't just a tenant paying rent, I was a co-owner with equal rights to the property. After that family meeting, I went upstairs to my childhood bedroom and sat on the bed I'd been sleeping in for 3 years, staring at the wall where my high school diploma still hung. For the first time, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. I took the next day off work and went to see a real estate attorney. Sarah Chen had handled the refinancing paperwork 2 years earlier, so she was already familiar with the situation. When I explained what my parents were planning, her eyebrows shot up. "Lauren, you understand that as a co-owner they cannot transfer this property without your consent, right?" "I'm starting to understand that, yes." She pulled up the deed on her computer and walked me through exactly what my rights were. Not only could they not give the house to Tyler without my agreement, but as a co-owner, I was entitled to force a sale and claim my share of the equity if I chose to. "If you want to pursue this," Sarah said, "I'd recommend documenting all your financial contributions to the property. Every payment, every repair, every expense. It'll strengthen your position significantly." I spent the next month quietly gathering evidence. Bank statements showing rent payments, receipts for repairs I'd funded, text messages where my parents had acknowledged that Tyler wasn't ready for financial responsibility, photos of work I'd done around the house. I also started looking at real estate listings, calculating what the house was worth. After years of improvements in a rising market, the property had appreciated considerably. My share would be enough for a substantial down payment on my own place. The day my parents had planned to make it official with Tyler was a crisp December morning. We all trooped into Sarah Chen's office, Tyler practically bouncing with excitement about becoming a homeowner without ever having to qualify for a mortgage. I sat quietly while my parents explained their wishes to Sarah. Tyler kept checking his phone, probably already planning what renovations he'd make with money he didn't have. Then Sarah cleared her throat and slid a folder across the table. "I'm afraid there's a complication," she said, her voice professionally neutral. "This property cannot be transferred to Tyler without Lauren's consent. Lauren is a co-owner with equal rights. The silence in that room was deafening. Tyler's head snapped up from his phone. What do you mean, co-owner? Mom's face went pale. But we just added her for the refinancing. That was temporary. Nothing in the legal documents indicates this was temporary, Sarah replied. Lauren has full ownership rights. I watched my family process this information. Tyler's expression shifted from confusion to anger. Dad's jaw was working like he was chewing something bitter. Mom looked like she might cry. Finally, Tyler exploded. This is bullshit. Lauren, you know they meant for me to have this house. Stop being greedy. For 30 years, I'd been trained to apologize, to step aside, to make things easier for everyone else. But sitting in that lawyer's office, surrounded by legal documents that finally gave me equal standing, something fundamental shifted. Actually, Tyler, I said, my voice steady for the first time in years, I don't know that at all. What I know is that I've contributed over $40,000 to this house while living here. I know that I've paid rent for 3 years while you lived there for free. And I know that when banks look at financial responsibility, they put my name on deeds and not yours. Dad tried to regain control. Lauren, be reasonable. We're family. We can work this out. You're absolutely right, Dad. We are family, and family means everyone gets treated fairly. That's when I told them my decision. I was exercising my right to force a sale of the property. The house would go on the market and I'd take my legal share of the proceeds. The meltdown was immediate and spectacular. Tyler started shouting about how I was ruining his life. Mom began crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. Dad demanded to know how I could be so vindictive. But here's the thing about finally standing up for yourself after 30 years of being a doormat. It feels incredible. Within 3 months, the house was sold. I took my 50% share, over $150,000, and bought a beautiful little townhouse across town. 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, and most importantly, my name alone on the deed. My parents ended up renting a small apartment, struggling with their finances without my monthly contributions. Tyler had to get his first real job at 25 because suddenly there was no safety net, no family home to fall back on. The aftermath was predictable. Family members called to tell me I was being cruel. Distant relatives lectured me about forgiveness and family loyalty. Every holiday I'd get texts from Mom. We miss you, Lauren. Can't we just move past this? But I never replied, because I'd learned something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or elaborate schemes. Sometimes it's simply refusing to continue being taken advantage of. 2 years later, I'm sitting in my own living room, in my own house, decorated exactly how I want it. No Tyler's gaming setup dominating the space, no parents questioning my choices. Just peace, quiet, and the satisfaction of finally being treated as an equal, by the law, if not by my family. The backup child always gets underestimated. But sometimes, we're the ones who end up holding all the cards. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of underdogs getting justice. Comment below and tell me, what's the most satisfying moment you've seen someone stand up to unfair family treatment? And remember, being family doesn't give anyone the right to treat you as less than. Sometimes the best thing you can do is bet on yourself. Until next time, keep fighting for what you deserve.